Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We got some new numbers on the economy. They are not looking good. We've also got a new pardon from Trump, this one of a corrupt Democrat. So a little bit of bipartisan corruption. Not that that's an unusual thing here in Washington. We'll take a look at that one. This one impacts the House because this is a representative of the House who was indicted anyway. A lot of potential implications there. We've got new photos and videos released by the House Oversight Committee of Epstein's Island. We will show you that. They are also attempting to get more financial records that they could reveal to the public. So some significant developments there. We're taking a look at the political fallout after this Tennessee election was closer than comfort, I guess, for Republicans in that special, and what they are looking at heading into the midterms. There's a lot of Republican sort of maneuvering. Mike Johnson's getting thrown under the bus, so we'll look at that. Hillary Clinton and others letting it all hang out on Israel. CNN is partnering with Kalshi as we descend further into this capitalist hellscape, and we've got some new details on those boat strikes as Admiral Bradley does head to the Hill today. So some significant movement there as well.
That's right. Thank you to everybody who's been signing up, breakingpoints.com. If you can support our work over here, become a premium member. By the way, it's been very cool to see all of your Spotify Wrapped. If we were in your top, we did record a little video for all of you, and so thank you all very much. It is very, very cool to see, and we were looking, we achieved significant growth, actually, some 130% increase, apparently, in our podcast. I was looking at the stats that they sent over to us, so thank you all very much. And that was just on the Spotify platform. So if you are listening to this as a podcast, please rate us 5 stars, share it with a friend. Really helps other people find the show. Apparently, a lot of you did that this year, so thank you all very much. Seriously, it does mean a lot. It's very cool to see the numbers, and it's also kind of fun to see what other people listen to. We have a very eclectic fan base. I could see people listen to comedy, only news. It's kind of amazing.
My last few months, it turns out, were very dominated by K-pop demon hunters.
Really? That's really fun. You know,
in fairness to me, my 8-year-old is also listening on my phone. So
that's the funny thing is all my songs are just songs that the kid will go to sleep to. So, right? So it's all "You're Welcome" from Moana. It was my #1 song. I've moved
out of the Disney age and into the K-pop demon hunters era. So there
For
you
me,
go.
also, my podcast listening moments went down by 40%. So that's what fatherhood has done. It's destroyed my podcast listening time. It's okay. It's all worth it. Anyway, thank you all very much. Seriously, very gratifying. I know YouTube has its own Wrapped function as well. It's also cool to see us on that. So let's go ahead and start with the economy. Some troubling job numbers coming from ADP with an immediate reaction here from CNBC summarizing how this was a major, unexpected, actually, job loss that hit Wall Street. Let's take a listen.
Big miss on the ADP payrolls. The private payroll company saying private payroll shed 32,000 workers in November. That's the 4th negative number in the past 6 months for this series. Take a look here. The estimate was for 40,000, so the street was off on this one. But the big story here, and I'll show you more detail on this, is what's happening with small business, down 120,000. Medium and large business doing okay, up 51 and 39,000 respectively. But take a look at this chart here. Virtually all of the job losses have come from small business, which has been negative in 6 of 7 months since April. Without those losses, ADP numbers would actually be positive. But you can't get rid of it. You can't exclude small business. At least according to ADP, additional weakness in the job market and small business getting hammered. And there is some information that some of this may be coming from being hammered by the tariffs.
So there you go. You can see he's saying some indication in terms of the tariffs, but more importantly was the miss in terms of the ADP numbers, the 4th negative number in the past 6 months, and the estimate was for that plus 40,000. Let's go and put A2 up here on the screen. Some interesting kind of firm by firm data. Actually, what you see is that the ADP losses is that most industries are doing layoffs. The only ones still hiring are hospitality and healthcare. Wow. Actually, that explains a lot, right? So healthcare, we have this exploitive, insane, destructive system. Hospitality is entirely dominated by the top 10%. And so that means that the rich can continue to travel. Again, if you're a sucker for this type of lifestyle pornography, the Wall Street Journal every other day is always like, big hotels are booming than ever. Or like, why Ritz-Carlton is more in demand than any other. I always click on them and I always read them because there is just something to this like economy where you've got top 10% who spend 50% of the money. And so 90% of people overall not doing either as well and not spending nearly as much. And so that, I think it's called K-shaped, right, in terms of the economy. But what you can see very specifically is that those smaller to medium-sized firms, really the backbone of American innovation and of community, is really hurting. So there was a 1 to 19 employees for something like our company has a reduction of some 46,000, and then the 20 to 49 employees down by 74,000. So these smaller firms are really having trouble. Larger companies are still hiring, but quote, a tough year for small business due to tariffs and more selective spending from lower and middle class consumers. And I think that, you know, really hits it home is the lower middle class consumer and other. And if you really think about, you know, the Amazons of the world, the Googles, and even retail that goes after either everybody and or can selectively make it so that they're very desirable to that high income family, they're going to be fine, you know, in something like this, in addition to the big business. But if you're a smaller or medium sized firm, maybe you do like services or something like that, doesn't necessarily, that goes to everybody, not necessarily to the top 10%, that's exactly who's struggling in this. And that's really, that's, you know, it sucks, right? Because if you think about smaller, medium-sized, maybe brick and mortar businesses in towns and others where, let's say your income is below 150,000 per year in terms of the median, that's going to be a tough place to do business.
Yeah, well, it makes sense when you think about the tariff impact. When we first had quote unquote Liberation Day, we covered a number of these small businesses that were like, I have no idea how we're going to be able to survive, because even though they had a profitable business, a lot of these small businesses, like, they're living sort of month to month. You know, they don't have a giant cash reserve so that they can wait until Trump figures out what the hell is going on, or the courts get involved and he changes the rates and makes it so that you can sustain yourself. In that time, you're bleeding, if not completely dying. So it makes sense on that level. It also makes sense on the level that you're not going to be the one that gets to go to the Mar-a-Lago dinner or gets to offer your gold bar in the White House to be able to be saved by the king. So, you know, I think that's another element of why small businesses are the ones being decimated in particular. They're also not likely to be the ones participating in the great AI revolution that is propping up so much of the economy at this point. So, you know, we're really starting to see the effects. And the other thing, you know, we normally in the past wouldn't have necessarily covered the ADP jobs report because we would have relied on the government numbers.
Yeah, right.
They don't put the numbers down anymore, number one. I mean, during the shutdown, we didn't get anything. And number two, I don't think anyone has any confidence in these numbers whatsoever. So that has made the ADP numbers that much more significant. There's another aspect of this, of course, which is the political aspect. How is the administration messaging all of this? Earlier in the week, Trump said that affordability is a Democratic con job. So that's what the language coming from the president of the United States. And you've got Scott Bessent, who has now made this claim, I think, a couple of times, that the best thing you can do, and we covered this previously on the show, the best thing you can do if you're worried about inflation is move to a red state, because inflation is lower in red states. Turns out that is not true whatsoever, and he got called on it live. Let's take a look at that.
People in her district are having an affordability problem. I should have said, well, she's in a red state, affordability is worse. In a blue state, affordability is worse than a blue state.
We can debate that, but keep going.
No, there's no debate. The number 50 basis points higher inflation, the 10 highest, the inflation rates, they are in blue cities, but
just so you know, because I went to look at this, this is the Joint Economic Committee, since 2021. The highest inflation of the past 4 years has been in red states, especially Florida.
I'm talking about current.
Current. Not over the past 4 years.
Right. Today.
Okay. I would think 4 years would be a reasonable trend line to look at.
Just utterly absurd. I mean, the thing is stupid to start with. Like, oh, just uproot your whole life and move somewhere. We're not going to do anything. But if you're worried about inflation, go ahead and uproot your whole life, find a new job, sell your house. Good luck getting a mortgage at the same rate, and move to a different place that has slightly lower inflation, because we're certainly not doing anything for you. And then even on the merits of that he's getting called out that, like, that's not actually really even true, unless you have this like very slow, well, in the past 36 days in cities only, then this actually works out. Just ridiculous.
It's just so stupid. It's
yeah.
one of those where it's like, dude, I mean, this is why him and there's a few others, Kevin Hassett and others, like they are just like the Biden officials who would go out in 2022 and they'd be like, actually, we're tackling inflation, Bidenomics, and it was met with it was met with ridicule, I think correctly, not just by Wall Street, but by, I think, everyday consumers. And yeah, I mean, fundamentally, what exactly is the message? Like living in a red state is better? Like, yeah, maybe. I mean, it depends on what you value, right? I mean, that's the whole point of living in different states.
Yeah.
We all have, every state gets to do things a little bit differently. For example, if you're in Florida, you can live in a boomer hell where they want to reduce property taxes. So, that's your right as Americans. You can do that if you would like. You certainly can, and then you can also live in what's the highest tax state? California. Some people, they're like, sunshine is worth it to live with a bunch of fentanyl bums who are living around me, no criminal justice or anything. That's fine. You could do that if you want to. That's America. All right. So it's just one of those where you get to choose.
By the way, after Zoran's election, there was the rich people are going to leave New York. Apparently, luxury real estate sales are actually up in New York. So everybody relax.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily
the rich people are staying in New York City, if that was a concern for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was never a particular guy. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the global rich in New York City or Los Angeles or any of these other places. But yeah, I mean, this is part of what's so stupid, I think, broadly around the thing. And it also just gets to the being out of touch. Importantly with the economy, whenever it comes to these officials, affordability is a con job. Just uproot and move if you would like. It also just gets to the point of, what we always talk about with Trump is division, 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 and he's used that very, very effectively. But the thing is right now is that this idea of, in terms of the red state versus the blue, trying to pit people against each other, what I think that misunderstands is that on economic questions, people are actually a lot more united than ever before. They're really not in a war, in the same way they might be on culture or anything else. Like they are pretty united in saying that housing and inflation are the two pillar problems, and that's why I think that rhetoric like that really doesn't land, and it actually makes light of a very serious situation, no matter where you live. And that's part of where the division strategy, which is very effective on culture, I don't think it lands even close on economy or on immigration. Right? It's just not the same issue set.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because certainly at other times, like when Trump was in his initial political rise back in 2015, 2016, there was more of a sense of like the cities are doing great and the rest of the country is getting screwed.
Yeah.
Now the sense is everybody's getting screwed. We're all getting screwed. And, the rich people are writing the rules. They're rigging the system. They're sucking up everything. They're doing their AI thing. They're, looking at being trillionaires. And meanwhile, we'll get to CNN now doing deals with Kalshi so that they can, get you further addicted to gambling and exploit and abuse you even more. Like we're just at this point of absurdity in terms of where the capitalist system is. So, all the stress signs are there. People are screaming loud and clear. We do not feel like this economy is going well. We don't think it's going to go well. We are not hopeful about our future. We're not hopeful about our kids' future. We don't feel like you're focused on the things that you said you would be in the campaign. Now, whether or not they were right to think he'd really be great on business, I think it's reasonable to I think it's reasonable for an ordinary person to be like, you know what, the economy was better under his first administration. He's a business guy. He's going to be focused on this. It's going to be better for me and my family. And to feel a genuine sense of disappointment and frankly betrayal that has not been his focus. And then the audacity to tell you that affordability is a con job made up by the Democrats while you're looking at him hanging out with Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman and these other characters, giving them the world while they build out their data centers and spike your electricity bills. Yeah, you're going to be disgusted, and the Republican Party is going to pay a massive political price for abandoning people at a time when they are increasingly feeling the squeeze. These ADP numbers are just one more sign that, there was a lot of hopium from from MAGA insiders here that you and Emily both were speaking to, that they felt like, we're going to do this tariff thing. There's going to be some pain, but, a year from now, things are going to be turning around. When we're going into midterms, people are going to be feeling like things are great. Now it seems like even they've abandoned that to, falling back on, well, just move to a different state if you feel bad about things the way they are. Or, just pretend like none of this is a problem. Affordability is a con job. Just deny the reality that you're living literally every single day.
On the tariff question, if you think about it, it was paired specifically with it's going to make America richer. It's also going to bring back business. That has just simply not been the case. Why? Because as we said a myriad times, there's no problem with tariffs. Tariffs are fine. I support tariffs. You use them as a tool in, you pair it with a lot, not just industrial policy, but a concerted, bureaucratic, strategic effort that says these are the types of things that we want to. Now, actually, in some ways, they have done that. It's just to the benefit of only the AI industry. But if that bubble pops, that's a big problem. And as I just showed,
it's not something that really benefits. I mean, there's some construction, like the construction industry is doing okay because of the data center build out. But in terms of long-term jobs, those data centers require like 50 people.
Yeah,
it's minimal.
Technology is a power law business. The wealth vastly accumulates to the founders and to the employees.
Right.
That is literally the story of Silicon Valley and of software engineering. That's why it makes them all filthy rich. That's fine. But the point is not to say that that should be the basis of the entire United States economy. And in fact, if you want, industrial policy or something, you want to be able to support the other types of businesses, to industries that don't have power law returns necessarily, but are really important to your overall industrial base. Things like cars, things like, metals. Again, we don't even have to be woke about it. Oil refineries, if we want to, nuclear power plants. All of these are highly capital-intensive businesses, but the returns are much more broad-based across society, and they actually help lift everybody up together. We don't have a lot of that, and so that's where I think the big failure is. And I also look. It's December 4th. Trump has literally almost been president for a year. What is it, 11 months now? I think almost exactly to the day. So you've been president for 11 months, and the same thing. If you think back to Biden, even Obama, things very much soured on his term by this point in people's presidencies. Bill Clinton is the same thing. It's very difficult actually to turn around once you're at this point. You can become kind of a manager and just hope things go on the upswing, but that's not their style. And so in the absence of that, you're going to have issues. The last thing I do want to mention is about this tariff stuff, because this could create a new fresh round of craziness. Let's go to the next part, please. This is Besson at that same conference said that the Trump administration will be able to replicate tariffs even if it loses a Supreme Court decision. So as we had said here before, it's pretty clear that the Supreme Court is very skeptical of the Trump tariffs and may even require refunds. But there are other longer solutions where they would be able to implement the same tariffs. They just have to go through more of a bureaucratic process, which takes a little bit longer. But he's saying that they are committed to doing that. I'm only saying this because it means that you could have similar Liberation Day style craziness in our markets and in our economy. But this would be 6 to 8 months from now, which just happens to be around the time of the November elections.
It also means that even if the Supreme Court rules, then there's still no certainty.
Right.
It's not like, okay, well, we can't do this, so we're just not doing this. Maybe they just abandon it. That's possible. Or maybe they try to, go through a different process. Maybe, oh my God, they could actually work with Congress, but I don't think Congress is going to give them what they want at this point, because Republicans were never all on board with this direction to begin with. And now Donald Trump is significantly weakened after the, off-year election losses. One last thing to mention, you're talking about, okay, well, what was promised with the tariffs? Like, what was the argument? The argument, as we covered at the time, was incoherent and all over the place, right? Sometimes it was about fentanyl. Sometimes it was about, I'm mad at Brazil over Bolsonaro's treatment. Sometimes the sort of, if you give them the most charitable reading, it was like, we're going to bring back American manufacturing. We're going to have these good, middle-class factory jobs are going to be back in America. Well, we've now had our 9th straight month of manufacturing decline. So, now maybe, I guess you could say, but over time, but there's just no policy put in place that is going to actually rebuild or encourage U.S. manufacturing. In fact, the fallout has been exactly what we predicted, which is that it's going to create a lot more uncertainty and actually create incentives to move that manufacturing elsewhere or do layoffs, et cetera. And that is what we are seeing. And that's a shame because, under the Biden administration, got all kinds of gripes with them. We've named them all here on the show. Some of their industrial policy was actually working. There was actually an increase in manufacturing activity. The first time in the modern era that coming out of a recession, you actually had more manufacturing jobs created. The story of the last 30, 40 years has been whenever there's a downturn, manufacturing jobs go away and they don't come back. So they had through this policy, that's why when we say like tariffs can work when they're done right, when they're targeted, when they're paired with industrial policy, Biden was nibbling around the edges of that and it was showing some results. And now all of that has been completely wiped away and we're going in the polar opposite direction and betting the entire economy on this AI future data center build out and inflating this gigantic bubble that is either going to pop and be a disaster or come to fruition and also be a disaster. I mean, they're trying to rip up the entire social contract. Again, not exactly what was sold on the presidential campaign to people, and yet here we are.
That's right. All right, why don't we get to Cuellar?
So Trump with another pardon. This one, I would say, surprising, apparently surprising Mike Johnson, and has direct impact on the Republican majority. This is of Representative Henry Cuellar. He represents a increasingly sort of right-trending South Texas district. And as I think the most conservative Democrat left in the House at this point has been more hawkish on things like border security and was indicted, him and his wife, for alleged, fraud, money laundering, just taking bribes and then doing the bidding of various companies and various governments, by the way. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Trump explaining why he decided to pardon Cuellar.
Did you speak with House Republican leadership about your decision to pardon Congressman Henry Cuellar? And are you concerned that you made a vulnerable Democrat perhaps less vulnerable with that decision?
It didn't matter. He's a respected person. He was treated very badly because he said that people should not be allowed to pour into our country. And he was right. What happened is he got indicted for speaking the truth.
So, indicted for speaking the truth. Well, in reality, he was indicted because he allegedly funneled over $600,000 through sham consulting contracts, took money from a state-owned energy company in Azerbaijan and a Mexican bank in particular, and was doing favors and for them in exchange for that cash. Those are the allegations. He's been indicted. He has not been found guilty. This has obviously directed, Trump has just been on this pardon spree. He apparently does not think white-collar crime is actually crime. We covered earlier in the week some of the other pardons. We have some updates on that as well. But it also has direct political implications because this is a swing district at this point, a difficult one for Democrats to hold. Cuellar has, strong standing in the district. People know him. He's been there a long time, et cetera. And so if you're rescuing him from his legal troubles, it makes it more likely that Democrats will be able to hold on to this seat. I don't think it's probably going to matter anyway because it looks certainly like a midterm wave is building where Democrats are going to take control of the House pretty handily and don't necessarily need this seat in South Texas. But, this is not certainly a help to Republicans. On the other hand, I guess it's possible. He's saying he's still going to run as a Democrat. I guess it's possible he flips parties. He did issue a statement thanking Trump. We can put B3 up on the screen with his reaction. He says, I want to thank President Trump for his tremendous leadership and for taking the time to look at the facts. I thank God for standing with my family and I during this difficult time. This decision clears the air, lets us move forward for South Texas. This pardon gives us a clean slate. Noise is gone. Work remains. I intend to meet it head on. Thank you, Mr. President. God bless you and God bless the United States of America. Hakeem Jeffries, we got some bipartisanship here. Saagar, everybody coming together to support the pardoning of this, corrupt member of Congress who abused his position of power to take cash for him and his wife, allegedly, from foreigners in order to do their bidding. Let's put B4 up on the screen. He says this is exactly, Jeffries says this is exactly the right outcome. Listen, the reality is this indictment was very thin to begin with, in my view. Charges were eventually going to be dismissed, if not at the trial court level, then by the Supreme Court, as they've repeatedly done in instances just like this. Put B5 up on the screen as well. We've got a list here. We've got 12 members of Congress now who've been pardoned by Trump. So, if you're an elite and you say things or do things or give cash to the right person, you can do insider trading. You can take money from foreign governments. You can lie to the FBI. You can obstruct. You can, if you're George Santos, you could steal identities and lie about everything you could possibly imagine. And any of this is just perfectly fine if you're an elite and Trump likes you for some reason. So we have 12 members of Congress pardoned, or I guess commuted, and 10 Republicans and 2 Democrats. The 2 Democrats are now Cuellar and Rod Blagojevich, blast from the past there with that name. So anyway, there you go. Trump just letting white-collar criminals go at a pace we have never seen before. And as we've covered before, Saagar, certainly Trump not the first to abuse the pardon power, but the level, the shamelessness, and the sheer scope and scale of what he has done is truly without parallel.
Yeah, he he just takes what is usually the quiet part and then says it out loud. Sometimes his political strength also just rubs it in your face. If you don't remember the details, just let's go over them again. Between December 2014, November 2021, Congressman Cuellar and his wife allegedly accepted $600,000 in bribes from 2 foreign entities, an oil and gas company wholly owned by the government of Azerbaijan and a bank headquartered in Mexico City. The bribe payments were allegedly laundered pursuant to sham consulting contracts through a series of front companies and middlemen into shells owned by Imelda Cuellar, who performed little to no legitimate work under the contracts. In exchange for the bribes paid by Azerbaijani oil and gas, Cuellar agreed to use his office to influence U.S. policy in favor of Azerbaijan. In exchange for the bribes paid by a Mexican bank, Congressman Cuellar agreed to influence legislative activity and pressure high-ranking U.S. executive branch officials regarding measures beneficial to the bank. So that's the indictment that was actually leveled there against Mr. Cuellar.
I think there should be, to me, there should be elevated sentencing if you are a public official that engages in some of this.
I think there's like a sentencing guideline whenever it comes to abusing your public trust, but we never even got to trial. Like, that's ultimately the problem here.
And I mean, maybe it was going to be thrown out by the Supreme Court because they have basically made it so that corruption and bribery is like by and large legal. They've taken such a narrow view of what actually constitutes crimes, criminal acts of bribery and corruption, that maybe it would have been thrown out. But it's so disgusting that these people just get away with this. I mean, it truly is an attack on our entire system and the trust and faith that people put in you. It's so grotesque to me. And then for them all to be let off the hook en masse like this is, it's beyond a slap in the face. It's really disgusting.
Let's go to B6. Let's show everybody the next particular one. So we covered this previously, this Ponzi schemer. Well, the commutation issued to David Gentile actually wipes away all further fines and restitution. He had been sentenced to 7 years for the $1.6 billion scheme that had defrauded investors, and prosecutors had been seeking some $15.5 million in forfeiture. So he has wiped away all of that. And so
that's money that was meant to go to the over 1,000 victims of this man and his Ponzi scheme. And now they get nothing. They get nothing. So he was able to rob them and, through this Ponzi scheme bullshit, found guilty, right? So this is not alleged, found guilty. And now the victims get nothing because Trump came in and said, "Oh, I'm good with this guy. Go free, enjoy your life. Nothing to see here."
That's right. And actually, yesterday he actually commuted or pardoned someone that his own DOJ indicted some 5 months ago. That's my personal favorite.
Well, and you know who had prosecuted this case against Gentile? I think was that Emile Beauvais. Yes. He was his guy.
Yes.
And he was, I think justifiably proud of putting this guy behind bars. And now he comes in and, oh, never mind. We think this was, we don't think this was correct. People were asking, okay, why this guy? And we still don't really know. Many of these people who have gotten pardoned, there's sort of obvious either political or they gave money. We covered one of them who got pardoned or had a sentence commuted where mom had given millions of dollars and raised money. And right after she goes this dinner with Trump, lo and behold, the guy gets let free. And then I think that was the one that immediately started defrauding people again. And by the way, a number of the people that Trump has pardoned have already gone out and committed other crimes and offenses. So you are literally letting criminals loose on the streets, Mr. Law and Order. But in any case, people were like, it wasn't immediately clear why this particular fraudster got off the hook. He had a partner in crime who did not get let off the hook. So it was, eyebrow raising, what exactly is going on here. There's one possibility that's been raised. We have B7 up on the screen. Apparently, he had a bunch of connections that were sort of 2 degrees removed from Rudy Giuliani, is close with some of the people that this guy, David Gentile, was close to. So this is Jacqueline Sweet did this reporting. She says Trump commuted the prison sentence for financial fraudsters with ties to Russian tycoon allegedly linked to organized crime. This Russian tycoon, by the way, guys, now lives in Israel and is also very close to the entire Israeli government, number of whom were at his daughter's wedding, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll just read you a little bit of this and you guys can make of it what you will. So she says, Trump inexplicably commuted the sentence of a $1 billion Ponzi schemer, Scientologist, private equity exec, and accountant from Long Island just days into a 7-year sentence, leading to widespread speculation about why. David Gentile is not just any financial fraudster, however. His business history is long intermingled with former Russian oligarch Michael Cherney, wanted by Interpol for alleged ties to Russian organized crime, and Cherney's family and associates, records reviewed by Disaster Girl reveal. Michael Cherney has long worked with another allegedly Russian mafia-linked figure, Eric Kislin, whose uncle Sam Kislin is one of Rudy Giuliani's oldest friends and supporters, who once reportedly helped Trump stave off bankruptcy. Although it's unknown exactly who advocated for Gentile's release, his business ties bring him within 2 degrees of some of Trump's oldest backers in the Ukrainian and Russian-American business world and the highest levels of the Israeli government. So could be something going on with that.
That kind of fits with everything I know about some of these
Yeah.
pardons. So for example, the Honduran president, I was finally reading into it. The
It's like
case
a
was
Roger Stone guy, right?
It was no, but it's also Matt Gaetz. So it was like Matt Gaetz,
really?
Roger Stone. They kind of bubble up the case. Then it gets intertwined with the elections. And the State Department starts to see. It's just like a Byzantine network to basically get up to the favor of Trump. I mean, for example, this entertainment lawyer who he just pardoned a couple days ago. It's really crazy. Like, this guy was indicted by Trump's DOJ 5 months ago, and then he was just pardoned, and nobody really knows why. Like, he was the CEO of this entertainment group, quote, for orchestrating a conspiracy to rig bidding process for an arena at a public university in Austin, Texas. Nobody really understands how he got to Trump. They do know that he was represented by Trey Gowdy, so that's kind of the only like connection really that anybody knows. Trey Gowdy is the former Republican congressman, the guy who did Benghazi, and now he's on Fox News every once in a while. Like, that seems to basically be the way that this all came about. But yeah, it's totally nuts, right? I mean, this is somebody who was literally indicted by Trump's own DOJ. So to throw out and say the politicization just seems, I mean, it's a bit crazy. But that's how things are working right now.
Yeah, and then lastly, just to give you a sense of how different this is on in terms of the scale versus what other presidents have done. Put B8 up on the screen. CNN compiled this data. So here's the number of pardons by presidents in recent years. So George W. Bush, 189, and that was over his 2 terms. Obama, 212, also over his 2 terms. Trump, in the first administration, 144, so sort of in line with what others were doing. Biden, 80. And now Trump, 2025, 1,500 plus. So, this is really kind of, I guess, typical of Trump, and especially Trump 2.0, where every president has abused this pardon power. It really needs to go away. It has to be reformed. It needs to go away. Presidents should not have the powers of kings. But in any case, bipartisan affair to abuse the pardon power. And yet somehow Trump takes it and puts it on steroids. And it's like, okay, well, we're just going to do this to an insane degree. It's going to be brazenly obvious, the corrupt ties that these people had to me. It's going to be, it's just going to be in your face and constant, so that you can't even keep track of all the
we didn't even know about
criminals that we're just setting free.
Yeah, I mean, like this one, he was indicted. The sports thing, again, what I think is so extraordinary is these are some people in the antitrust division who spearheaded this indictment that went through, and then somehow through Trey Gowdy or whatever, you can just get a full pardon from the United States. It's just like outright corruption. It's totally crazy. But yeah, I guess that's how the government works right now.
Apparently.
All right, let's get to Epstein. Going now to Epstein, some new images of Epstein's island villa that were released by the House Oversight Committee. Let's go ahead and put these up here on the screen. Let's just keep this one up here for a while. I just want everybody to sit with this. It's like a dental chair and weird, creepy masks that are all around. There are some videos and images of the bedroom, but I mean...
It's like faces of old men.
Yeah.
There's
There's no
Who doesn't have a room like
explanation
that?
for that. there's no innocent explanation. Also, yeah, Larry Sell. Interesting. I wonder who Larry is there. In terms of his speed dial on his phone, these are some images. This is like a bathhouse, or it looks like a steam room maybe. No, not exactly sure. That was being used for storage purposes. That was on the island. We can continue a little bit here in terms of what we have from the island itself. Let's go to C2. Just a video walkthrough. I'd watched a little bit of this previously. It's nothing, explicitly groundbreaking, but I guess really what it comes down to is these images and others been released by the House Oversight Committee. Some of these are inside of these, so the Epstein files, the Epstein estate, and I really just think we should all sit with like the image themselves of, let's say, that creepy mask stuff that was there. You have the famous Bill Clinton painting. You have, all of the insane, like weird sexual artwork throughout the East 71st Street villa. You have cameras. You have the design, the mansion. Now we have the emails, and we have personally read like thousands of the man's emails. Like the level of psychotic disposition this guy had in terms of his arranging massages and constantly like requesting photos from his assistants of girls and just like constantly be like, she's too fat or something like that. It's gross, right? And so you put all this stuff together and yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just, and by the way, like I said, having read through a lot of the guy's emails, he micromanaged this estate to a way like you can barely imagine. Like he was constantly asking for updates while the compound and the island was being built, and he'd be like rejecting this and rejecting that. And so like everything there is his own aesthetic design and taste as executed by Ghislaine Maxwell, and it's like this empire basically of his, like from his own mind that was created combined with the birthday book. It's just pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, again, I think we all have to sit with like Eyes Wide Shut was real. Like weird masks of old men on the walls. Like there's no innocent explanation for that. I'm sorry. There's not.
It's
especially when you put in the totality of everything else that was going on. All the houses and the book and the emails and the underage girls. Like it's open and shut. Okay.
There was also another photo that had a blackboard.
Let's put that up there. You can see.
Yeah, there's the blackboard. And it's hard to read those words, but it says power, truth, music, deception, intellectual, political, and then there's presumably names here that are redacted by the committee. So, who among us doesn't have this sort of thing on a blackboard somewhere in our house? I guess it's around the corner from the weird old guy mask and dentist chair room. Just normal stuff.
Power,
totally nothing to see here.
Plants, deception, So.
And here's the thing: is like if this was just if that's it, that's all we knew about Epstein.
Right.
I mean, okay, he's a little weird, right? Okay, but. This is part of a larger portrait that we have at this point based on the investigations into him, based on what the survivors have said, based on the records that have been released, based on things like what Donald Trump said about how much he likes them young, and based on certainly the recent email revelations that have been dug into, in particular by Ryan, Maz, and Saagar, and other journalists out there like Jason Leopold that, gives you starting to emerge a more complete picture of what's going on here. And the other thing with this is this continues to put pressure on the government and basically signal, look, we're not gonna let this go. We passed a law now. You have to release what you have. You have 30 days to do that. And as you're preparing these files, whatever you're gonna release, we are continuing to get information from various subpoenas that we've used our power in Congress in order to provide some level of transparency to the American public.
Yeah, let's go and so the files thing is very interesting, from the NBC News tear sheet about asking for the status update. Because remember, the law requires them to release it within 30 days. And this was on November 19th that it was enacted. So we really only have 15 more days before this is all supposed to come out. They say that the Justice Department announced their investigation, quote, into numerous figures, including Bill Clinton and Larry Summers, in response to that request. Quote, in the interest of transparency and clarity, we request a briefing in a classified or an unclassified setting to discuss the full contents of this new information, but no later than Friday, December 5th. So that's tomorrow, as of the day that we're all recording this. The new law, remember though, could be thwarted if they are able to say that they can cite an ongoing investigation and redaction and overall, like, just, you know, the process that they've gone about doing this, which is extremely clunky, and it makes it seem as if there's a cover-up. I also want to say, like, with the so-called Epstein files, like, everyone needs to be careful. Like, even what Ryan and I and Maz, like, what we've all gone through, this is a tiny fraction of what's in the Epstein estate, okay? That's nothing. We're just looking at emails from one particular Gmail and Yahoo account from, like, 05 to 08. By the way, again, as I reiterated in our segment, the 05 email was created after the feds or after the police started looking into him. So what's in the pre-05 emails, right? Like, what happened to that? And there's a lot of them that have been deleted, even inside of this inbox.
Yeah.
And so then what about after, you know, his conviction and his jail sentence, right? So there's a lot of stuff that still hasn't come out.
Well, the email you reported on where he's coming up with legal strategies and, like, you know, drafting this email, and he says, I have to assume the feds know about probably 20 underage girls. Right. Well, guess what would be in the government files? What did they actually know? You know, how much information did they have at the time when they were convinced by, you know, Epstein and his legal team, including Alan Dershowitz, that, like, you know, guys, this is really not, they're going to handle it at the state level. You guys really don't need to worry about this. Like, how much information did the government have at that time when they did kick it to the state level and say, oh, okay, you guys down there, Alex Acosta, do your sweetheart deal, do your thing. Just as one example of the sort of things that would be contained in the government records. There's a lot there, and we've only gotten a glimpse of a tiny, tiny fraction.
Yes, absolutely correct. And I do want to put C4 up here on the screen just to reiterate this. This is, look, I'm not a financial professional. I have gone through a lot of his stuff, like the financial stuff inside of the deals. I will say none of it seemed all that sophisticated to me. Like, you know, all the claims are about all these sophisticated hedge fund transactions. Maybe there's a different email. I'm just saying, from what I saw, it was very standard. Like, hi, Jeffrey, I'm raising money for X, Y, and Z, and I could use a few million, or somebody trying to buy some shitty movie studio. A lot of it also was like directing Les Wexner charities. Like, nothing was very, like, nothing explained becoming a billionaire is really what I'm saying. And that's kind of the mystery, right? And so what the Epstein survivors have said is that they are supporting this Ron Wyden bill, which would force Treasury to turn over Epstein bank records. And I do want to give credit to Ron Wyden because he's actually been beating this drum now for a while. The banks and the Treasury departments are sitting on over $1 billion of suspicious activity reports that they updated after Epstein's death. All of those, like, that is the real stuff here, the wire transfers, because we have a very small slice, which I've cited before. The New York Financial Services Department put out a fine of Deutsche Bank years ago, I think back in 2020. And I did several monologues about it at the time. You can go watch. But it details the exact scheme through which he was wiring money to the Eastern Europeans. But again, this is just one bank. And he had bank accounts at JP Morgan Chase and all of these other, like, high finance institutions where he was moving billions of dollars. That's literally 1.1 billion or so around in ways that should have triggered, like, investigations by the federal government. So then you're like, okay, well, why'd the banks not do anything about this? Like, you know, you or I mean, has anyone, recently, I had to send a wire transfer from our bank account for business purposes. It takes forever. Yeah, they're like, are you sure you authorize? You know, it's like, and that's us, like a small business. You can't just move money around the world. Like, it doesn't work like that.
When I try to ride in an Uber in a town I haven't been in for a while, like, fraud alert.
Yeah, you're like, fraud alert, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, exactly. Like, everybody, like, when you interact with the world and the financial system, like, I can't send a wire transfer without having to call the bank and be like, yes, I authorized this purchase. And they're like, well, what's the, have you been contacted by fraud? And this guy just gets to wire billions. Now, maybe that's just par for the course for billionaires. It probably is, if we're being honest. But at the very least, like, when you're moving all this money through these banks, like, they have to, KYC, know your customer laws and stuff, they have to determine, they're like, well, where did this money come from? It's a legitimate purpose, right? Are you money laundering? And so they clearly violated, in many cases, because they've been fined for it and they've been sued for it, a lot of their own internal guardrails. So, like, that, again, I know everybody wants to talk about the black book and, you know, this client list, there's no client list, any of that. The nexus of it all, it's all in the money. That's the whole story from the intel. That's what made him useful. That's what made him powerful, is the money enabled everything else. Get access to that, And that's when I think you'll take down some real people.
Well, and we may get some progress on that just in the coming days. So in addition to these photos and videos, Robert Garcia, who's the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, says they're going to be releasing more financial records in the days ahead. So we could be getting some more information there today, tomorrow, over the coming week. So that is something to keep an eye on. And again, I think it's important to keep the pressure on. Listen, none of us, we're not Pollyanna here. We're not actually expecting the government to completely come clean and release everything. But, and we know that they've spent lots of time and close to $1 million taxpayer dollars going through these things to redact them and scrub them. I mean, I don't think anyone expects them to release anything that's going to be incriminating to the President of the United States because they, they'll be out of a job if they do so. But still, like whatever comes out, whatever additional pieces of the puzzle, even if they're not about Trump and they're about other people, that's, it's a step forward. And so every time the House Oversight Committee releases more tranches of documents, it keeps the story alive, it keeps the pressure on, and it keeps the public focused on putting pressure on the government to follow the law that has now been passed by Congress and signed into law by the president.
Exactly right. And everyone's like, oh, why do they release this? It doesn't show anything new. I don't know. More the better, okay? The more you keep it alive, the more that people take an interest in this. That's one thing I have been very heartened by, is that even though Trump and MAGA and all of them want to move on, many of us came to this long before Trump was ever in the picture. It was never about Trump.
Long before the Democrats were super focused on it.
Yeah, by the way,
here the whole time,
when the Dems were all like, it's a conspiracy, it's anti-Semitic to say he was connected to, never cared then, didn't care now. We're just going to keep on keeping on. And by the way, shout out to Pablo Torre, our friend. He's been doing some sports angles in the Epstein story.
Really?
Yeah, he just did a segment on it yesterday. It was fascinating, actually. And so he will actually, I've been speaking to him a little bit. He should have more stories potentially soon on the sports angle. And so this is the fun part, is like, as this goes out, people with different niche areas can look into their own like spheres of influence. Hollywood, for example, I pointed out, this isn't my area of expertise, but I'm reading through and I'm like, yo, Epstein's getting all these invites, all these Hollywood premieres like Michael Clayton and The Sopranos and all this stuff. I'm not a variety reporter, but some Hollywood person should probably go dig into that.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just looking at Israel intelligence and whoever the actual case.
Pablo Torre.
Whoever that
Hollywood
person
world.
is. Yeah, although I feel like Hollywood media is probably more compromised than anybody else. That's just my opinion.
Very possible.
Okay, let's get to 2026.
Yeah, so some interesting numbers here from CNN and Harry Enton talking about how it looks very much like a massive blue wave is coming, and based in part on the election results from this week in Tennessee. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
Republicans should be running for the hills this morning because the blue wave is building, my dear friend, Mr. Berman. What are we talking about here? Well, Matt Van Epps, the Republican candidate, he won it by 9. But this is a district that Donald Trump won by 22 points, 15 points, 17 points. This is a 13-point gain for the Democrats in terms of the margin. And excuse time for Republicans is over, because I hear all about these special elections. Oh, the turnout's so low. It's not representative of what happened in the midterm election. The turnout last night in Tennessee's 7th district was equal to the turnout in the 2022 midterm election. I love the people in Central Tennessee, but Central Tennessee is nothing special compared to the rest of the country. But what we see happening is, take a look here. Okay, 2025 U.S. House special elections. Dems outrunning Kamala Harris. A lot of blue here, a lot of blue, which is what I think the nation might look like a year from now if these results hold. Arizona 7, you see a 17 outperformance of Kamala Harris. 23 points in Florida 1, 16 points in Florida 6. 13 points in Tennessee 7, 28 points in Texas 28, and then 17 points in Virginia 11. So we've seen it throughout the nation, whether you go from the suburbs of Washington, D.C., all the way to the southwest in Arizona, whether you're looking at Texas, whether you're looking at Tennessee, whether you go down to Florida, we have seen the Democratic outperformance of Kamala Harris happening across the political map. We actually have history to show that what happens in special elections doesn't just stay in special elections. It spills over to the midterm results. Special elections and midterm results. I just keep going to this. When a party outperformed in special elections since 2005, 5 out of 5 times they went on to win a majority in the U.S. House of Representatives.
So pretty interesting to see those numbers there. Let's put the next element up on the screen. You can see some aggregate and comparisons to prior years. So this says overperformance in special elections. You got 17 and 18 Democrats +6, 19 and 20 Democrats +2, 21 and 22 Republicans +4, 23, 24 Democrats +2. This time, so far, Democrats +11.
I'd like to see the pre-Tea Party numbers. I bet you it was similar, right? Somewhere around 09.
Yeah.
If you think back to that time, it was very similar to the +11.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But I think Ensign points out what is the most sort of critical component of the Tennessee results, which is, you know, the cope from Republicans, these special elections, you know, you've got your Democrats have these high propensity voters now. It's not emblematic. It's going to be different when it comes to the midterms. And no, it's not a presidential year, but midterm turnout is going to be a lot higher. Well, the turnout in Tennessee was really high. And still, they moved the margin by 13 points. If you manage to do that across the country, I mean, it's a bloodbath that, you know, is, I think, beyond even what we saw in the 2010 Tea Party wave election. If you truly had that result across the country, it would be an extraordinary political reckoning. Now, can they pull off 13 points? That's a very tall order, but that's the reason why Republicans should be freaking out here, is because you didn't have, you know, some sort of like Republicans aren't paying attention and only the Demo, like the white college-educated liberals showed up. No, this was a high turnout, midterm level turnout election. You had a literal socialist as the Democrat, by the way, and you still had a 13-point shift towards the Democrats. I mean, that really is a red alarm.
Yeah, it totally is an alarm. And the reason why is that, as you said, with that sample, is if it was low turnout, you can cope yourself away. But also, though, even with midterm level turnout, if the midterm turnout is going to be still so heavily Democratic and indicate some swing, that's a big problem. Now, obviously, it is Tennessee and it is a single election, but these are basically, midterms always are about enthusiasm when it comes to voters. Most people don't, at least a lot of voters don't pay as much attention to the midterms, and it's usually an opposition party. Now, let's give the caveat case is Glenn Youngkin wins in Virginia, right? There's a clear view of a red wave that's coming. Then Roe versus Wade happens and it changes everything. So like a lot could still change.
Sure.
It's a whole year, right? True. I mean, we have no idea. There could be a major international incident. There could be a war in Venezuela. So things could potentially go even more south.
Yeah,
or maybe he would ride some commander-in-chief wave. Nobody knows, all right? But a lot of shit can happen in the next 11 months. But as things stand right now, where things also, I think, are trending, we can only live in the moment that we are right now. It doesn't look particularly promising. And I also think there will be a lot of accountability at the Republican level for everybody but Trump. No Republican can admit that it's Trump's fault. But already the knife fighting, like we're about to show with Stefanik, people already know. Like everybody knows. And Mike Johnson, he's not long for this world.
Yeah, we'll put D3 up on the screen. So at least Stefanik has taken the knives out pretty aggressively against Mike Johnson. Now she is running, she's New York representative, she's running for governor. She is down like extraordinarily large amount in the polls. And Trump really screwed her over by embracing Zoran and, taking any sort of heat out of the case she was making against Hochul, being close to Zoran and trying to make something of that. Not that I thought that was that great of an attack to begin with. But she was really betting a lot on that, and that was sort of undercut by Trump. Anyway, it says here, Trump ally Elise Stefanik attacks Speaker Johnson's leadership. She called him an ineffective leader who is losing control over the GOP conference headed into the midterm elections. Quote, he certainly would not have the votes to be speaker if there was a roll call vote tomorrow, the New York lawmaker said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. I believe the majority of Republicans would vote for new leadership. It is that widespread. And your read of it, Saagar, is exactly my read of it. She can see things are going south, they're going sideways. She wants to separate herself from the Republican Party and say, I'm not like them, I'm critical of them, I have my own way that I would do things, I'm not like these people that you hate right now. But she can't point the finger at Trump, who's the one who's really to blame. I mean, Mike Johnson is nothing more than Trump's puppet. He's sort of irrelevant to the whole equation. But so she decides that the person that it's safe for her to go after is Speaker Mike Johnson. And I think you will see other people certainly following in her footsteps and pulling out the knives from Mike Johnson, because it's a similar way. I mean, you saw this thinking back to 2010 with Democrats when things weren't going well. They're like, okay, let me go after Pelosi, because that will signal that I'm not like the rest of this Democratic Party that you hate. I'm different from them. And they also went after Obama too at certain times as well. But Trump has this, stronghold. He's very, the retribution from him. You don't want to be on his bad side. You don't want him coming in and messaging against you, et cetera, or screwing you over in your, whatever you're trying to do in your state. So that's the place where she's trained her fire.
And what it will mean is that the race for Republican leader will be fascinating. Like if they
Who would want?
First of all, who would want? I think Steve Scalise would probably get it because he's already the number 2. Trump likes him. He's, he's a little bit different from Mike Johnson, but not all that. But I mean, there should be enough holdouts. Some people could credibly say, like, hey, you guys were a disaster. Like, you were really bad at your jobs. Like, why would we reward you? And there's enough shit stirrers that somebody might actually do something about it. I really don't know actually what's going to happen. But the point I think that stands really with Stefanik and the attack is that this is a preemptive ability to distance yourself from very unpopular Republican Congress. And in some ways, like, look, fundamentally, yeah, they should attack Trump, but they're not wrong. Like, the healthcare thing is a huge problem. It's not even just people like me saying it. Steve Bannon, I was just reading this morning, Matt Boyle, like the Breitbart guys, they're like, yo, we need to do something before December is over and these premiums are locked. I mean, we have, what, 20-something days?
Yeah.
Most of that's a holiday. Everybody knows the House of Representatives. By January 1, we're all in it. Like, we're in it together.
Yeah.
Premiums go up, and that's it. Like, that is enough. That's 7 million people just on Obamacare. So, yeah, that's not that many people, but compounded to the private market with an overall 25% increase. By the way, that's the other funny thing about our Byzantine health insurance system. How many people even know whether their insurance is connected to Obamacare or not? If it goes up because of the headlines, they're going to be like, this is Trump's fault, right?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, regardless of whether it's employer sponsored or not, because of the cycle, they're just going to blame the administration.
It's kind of fair, though. I mean, we had a whole shutdown fight over this. They refused to cave. Trump said, remember when he was, we were on the verge of announcing some healthcare plan from, what happened with that? That's just gone. We're not talking about that anymore.
Right.
So it does, that's fair to blame him for these specific increases that are coming, because he could do something and he's not.
To stop it, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, in terms of the point, though, is just, yes, shit, goes uphill whenever you're the president, and you are going to suffer the consequence. So nothing right now looks all that good. I do want to say Representative Nancy Mace, let's put D5 on the screen here, is considering, quote, this is from the New York Times, Nancy Mace has told people she is so frustrated with the Louisiana Republican and sick of the way he's run the House, particularly how women are treated there, that she is planning to huddle with MTG next week to discuss following her lead and retiring early from Congress. And so it could mean another early retirement there for the GOP, even further, screwing over Mike Johnson, but also just showing how dysfunctional and insane the entire thing is. So I don't think things are going that well there for Mike Johnson. And I think he will be one of the shorter-lived speakers in history. Like, I don't think he's going to be long for this world. All right. Let's get to Israel.
Let's get to Israel. I know Ryan and Emily covered this, but we wanted to, I think it's worth playing twice here. We had Hillary Clinton at this event for Israel Hayom. It's Israel's most read newspaper. I'm reading from Prem Talker here. Run by Israeli-American billionaire and Trump donor Miriam Adelson, joined by John Fetterman, Eric Adams, Trump UN ambassador Mike Waltz, Biden official Amos Hochstein, and various Israeli officials. So quite a lineup at this event. And she had some very noteworthy things to say about what she thinks is going on and why, why people's views on Israel have changed. Let's take a listen to that.
That our students, smart, well-educated young people from our own country, from around the world, where were they getting their information? They were getting their information from social media, particularly TikTok. That is where they were learning about what happened on October 7th, what happened in the days, weeks, and months to follow. That's a serious problem. It's a serious problem for democracy, whether it's Israel or the United States, and it's a serious problem for our young people. And it was frankly shocking to me how little the students we were encountering, not only in this class we teach, which is a very large class, international relations about crisis decision making, but students more generally. And that's why I mentioned the social media piece of it, because when you would try to talk to them to engage in some kind of reasonable discussion, it was very difficult because they did not know history. They had very little context. And what they were being told on social media was not just one-sided, it was pure propaganda. And so when you think about how to tell Israel's story, and it's important, it's not just looking internally, it's looking externally, and particularly looking at young people, because, you know, it's not just the usual suspects. It is a lot of young Jewish Americans who don't know the history and don't understand. I was talking to Condi Rice, and, you know, she said in an interview that I did after the 20-point plan came out, she and I were on CBS, and she said, you know, when people were chanting from the river to the sea, she would ask the students, what river, what sea? They didn't know. I had the same experience. A lot of the challenge is with younger people. More than 50% of young people in America get their news from social media. So just pause on that for a second. They are seeing short form videos, some of them totally made up.
In case you had any doubt about why they had to take over TikTok and make it much more censorious, this is why. But just imagine thinking that the problem here for Israel isn't the mass slaughter of hundreds of thousands. I mean, we have to be real about the actual death toll here of Palestinians, and seeing in your feed every day the worst atrocities you could possibly imagine, starving an entire population, turning all of the Gaza Strip into rubble, attacking hospitals, schools, mosques, churches, everything you can think of. No, that's not the problem. They just don't understand the history, Saagar. They just don't get it. And I mean, this is like the peak liberal Zionist view that worked for so long to keep people shut up, which was, yes, it looks bad, but you know, there's lots of
complicated.
It's complicated. You know, you just don't understand. Like, do you know what happened in this summit or that summit? Do you understand the details of when Clinton was negotiating? That you just don't understand enough. And this has been so horrific that people looked at this and said, you know what? I don't need to understand every little nuance and detail to know that this is wrong, to know that it is disgusting, that my tax dollars are going to fund this, that my government is going to support this, that Democrats like Joe Biden are running cover for it and have embraced Bibi Netanyahu and are letting him do whatever he wants. It did not take an understanding of history to know that this was wrong. But guess what? Also, many, many young people have actually become quite educated about this conflict and what led up to it. And let me tell you, the more they learn, the worse the Israeli side looks. That's the bottom line. And it is so wild to me that people like her still truly believe that the real problem here is a failure of Israeli propaganda and the quote-unquote propaganda that young people are getting on TikTok, and not the reality of the genocide that Israel has actually been committing.
I just think it's pretty, I mean, I think that argument worked because there was kind of something to it. I'm not saying there wasn't a lot of injustice and all of that, but like this mass slaughter live had not happened, correct? And I would say their most like barbaric actions fully had not taken over. And, you know, even in terms of their society, most of the like truly heinous rhetoric, they would say it in Hebrew. It wasn't as publicized. It also wasn't as powerful and didn't enact into actual government policy. But when the Ben-Gvirs and the Smotriches of the world and the West Bank all combines with Gaza, people are like, yeah, I'm done learning about Camp David or anything and thinking that there's some problem here, right? Like at the end of the day, we're funding this, we're propping it up. And it's also causing us all kinds of problems, like not even in terms of domestic, but we're spending billions and billions of dollars and our own domestic politics are revolving around this, and our government is actively, deporting people who are against it. You're like, whoa, right? It's like, that's what takes it to a whole other level. And that's where, look, I'll just say, thank God she lost, okay? This woman, from every time that we put her back on the screen, it's been almost 10 years. She was horrible, like truly. And that mindset, by the way, it's still pretty prevalent in permanent Washington today, like in the elite Democratic Party circles. You're not that far off. Maybe the voters may be different, but we also wanted to give voice to some of the other people at this conference. By the way, why is it even important to play this conference? It's like, not only is it the large newspaper, but this is Miriam Adelson, who is one of the biggest donors to Donald Trump and one of the most powerful mega donors in the Republican Party, who, by the way, according to Donald Trump, at one point he asked whether she loves Israel or America more, and quote, she didn't answer, and he suspected that it was Israel. According to him, not me. So just to clear all that up. So let's take a listen. Our producers have put together a mashup from the conference.
Let me be as clear as I can be. When someone chants from the river to the sea, they are calling for the elimination of the Jewish state. When people have no right to safety, no right to sovereignty, no right to exist, history tells us exactly what happens.
Just to pick up on that, what I'll tell everybody is skip Miami. If you're leaving New York, just come straight to Israel. There's no reason to make a stop in Florida before you need to come. And you can decide, you can stay here in New York in a declining empire, or you can come to Israel, which is part of the rising middle of the world, which is moving south and east. That's what I encourage you to do. I did it.
Do to our enemies here what Israel did to its enemies there, and on that, the IAC is focused. The challenge for us here is to leverage Israel's successes into our successes. Israel's weakness is ours and Israel's strength is ours. Our job in the diaspora is to leverage those wins and win here.
40% of New York Jews voted for Mamdani. Large parts of our community have lost their, I'll just say it, tribal instinct, their Jewish solidarity instinct, in a way that allowed them to vote for us open enemy of Israel, in my opinion, the Jews.
Great honor to have you here on the stage. On behalf of myself and the entire team of Israel Hayom, it's a great honor again to have you here.
I think if I speak for many of us here, if Dr. Adelson reaches out, then we figure out a way to get here.
Great.
She reaches out, she's got to figure out how to get here. Every one of those clips is like a conspiracy theory come true for real though,
I need them to keep having these conferences and keep talking. Just keep telling us exactly what you think. The problem is they've lost their tribal instinct.
You're like,
isn't that a positive thing?
Yes.
That they evaluate like, okay, I'm voting for mayor of New York, and let me evaluate the various candidates on how it's going to affect my life here. And oh, by the way, as an added bonus, this guy actually supports equal rights for everyone. That seems like something I might be on board with. Like, losing the tribal instinct is a positive. And then the guy who was like, we need to do to our enemies here what we did to them in Gaza. Like, you're threatening us with genocide now? Like, that's where we're at? Like, openly on this conference to applause. It's backed by one of Trump's largest donors. That is wild.
Well, let's take the tribal thing, right? Like, what's the whole critique around this whole Somali fraud story in Minnesota that Ryan and Emily covered yesterday? It's like, oh, well, they're barbaric, ethnic, tribal, and they defraud the government. You're like, say that again? What? So they're acting tribally and leaving, they refuse to leave behind the values of the old world. And you're like, well, the problem here in America is that people are acting more like individuals. That stuff really offends me also, because I get this sometimes from the Indian diaspora, particularly people in India. They'll be like, Saagar, some politician in California said something very mean about India. I go, oh, why should I give a fuck? I'm not from India, okay? Fuck off. That's your problem. It's one of those where, like, they try to claim you right? Because your parents happen to be from somewhere. I mean, look, if it's interesting, you know, from a American perspective, yeah, maybe I'll pay attention. But they're like, oh, this is very. Sometimes they even try and drag me into like caste fights. They're like, did you see what so and so said about? I go, yo, we live in America. We don't have castes here. Okay. And by the way, according to your own laws, you're not supposed to have them either. I don't care. And so. But they're literally trying to cling to that. I mean, the most offensive one was the guy that clearly, I mean, presuming who grew up in America, is he was like, you can't succeed here. Don't make a pit stop in Miami. It's like, that's like an anti-Semitic conspiracy, is that you can never truly be American. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what he's saying. He's literally saying that. That's literally the shit that neo-Nazis say. They're like, yeah, they're always loyal to Israel. I'm like, dude, I mean, you know, you can't just say stuff like this out in the, or I guess you can, but, you know, it's going to come with blowback. So it's just, I don't know. For me, like at the very same time, this Randy Fines on TV, he's like, every Somali should be deported and all this. I'm like, dude, you're exactly the same. Like you're actually, look, I mean, I don't know a lot. I read the New York Times story, obviously bad and all that for the whole Somalian thing, but you're like, you are the mirror image of what you're critiquing. You're like saying you came to our country, you're literally using your citizenship and your power in order to try and exercise our government on behalf of a foreign power. Like that's as clear cut as it gets in terms of treason, conspiracy, tribal, whatever. And I don't believe that about all Jews, obviously. I don't think anybody should believe that because I don't think it's true, as they are saying themselves.
Clearly they're very upset that it's not true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're, you know, and
yeah, they want it to be true, which is crazy. Like that's the part which drives me nuts.
Right. And, you know, one of the people who I think has been a thoughtful writer and thinker on the increasing divide in the Jewish community around sentiment around Israel is Peter Beinart, who's talking about how—
They hate him, though.
Oh, absolutely they hate him. No doubt about it. But, you know, he really took a major risk, like personal political risk, when he came out a while ago and said, you know what, this two-state stuff, this is bullshit. Like, it's got to, like, we're past that. They've annexed so much of the territory. There is no realistic solution that's not a one state with equal rights, and that's what we should be getting behind. And, you know, he's been, I think, a very courageous voice in a lot of ways on this issue. But, you know, he really amplifies how support for Israel was just sort of taken as this article of faith in the, you know, in the broader Jewish community. And, you know, you grow up learning about it and thinking about it. It's very tied into all of your religious school, and, you know, it's just taken for granted. And this genocide has broken that. And you're not putting it back together. You know, the majority of young Jews see this very differently. They're disgusted to be, you know, it's like not in my name. They're disgusted that they would be implicated in what this state is doing. So you have the double, you know, insult of not only are my taxpayer dollars, here's an American going to that, but now you're wanting to make me complicit in these crimes and say that this is somehow being done on my behalf? Like, no, absolutely not. So there is this, you know, major reckoning and split that is happening in the Jewish community that has been very significant. And so Zoran's election obviously is incredibly emblematic of that, because here he is now mayor-elect of the, you know, most Jewish city in America, one of the most Jewish cities in the entire world. And as an avowed anti-Zionist, that is an earth-shattering event. It also completely reshapes our politics, because it changes what, you know, most of these politicians just cynical political calculation. It changes what they understand the political landscape to be, which is also why it's so consequential. But yeah, I fully support them doing these conferences on camera, put it on Twitter. Just keep talking, guys. Keep telling us all your thoughts about this, because it is very educational to hear from you about the way that you are seeing the world. And wanted to get into a couple of very significant news pieces as well, just as a reminder of, you know, the genocide is not over. The ceasefire, you know, continues to be broken by Israel, and we now have new shenanigans which are being played here. I can put this up on the screen. Israel is saying they're going to, so they agreed in the ceasefire deal, they're going to open this crossing, the Rafah crossing at the border with Gaza and Egypt. That was one of the provisions of the ceasefire deal. Now Israel is saying, well, we're going to reopen it, but only to allow people to leave. So obviously Israel, their longtime goal, led by Netanyahu, but this is, you know, pretty society-wide, is how many Palestinians can we get out of this area? Because they are so fixated on their quote-unquote demographic problem. And so the more Palestinians that are there, the more of a risk they are to being, Palestinians, if you look at all of Israel and Palestine, are the majority of the population. So they want people to be forced to leave and to put pressure on them, make life so miserable that they want to leave, and not allow them back in. Now, what Israel is claiming is they're saying, oh, well, you didn't give us all the bodies of the dead hostages. Of course, this was also contemplated in that ceasefire deal, that this would be very difficult. Why? Because many are buried, many people are buried under the rubble. Israel's made it very difficult to even bring in the earth-moving equipment that would be required, et cetera. So in any case, they're using this as an excuse to keep that border for re-entry closed. Egypt is objecting to this, so this is an unsettled. We'll see what happens with all of this. And then I also wanted to put up on the screen this reporting, which confirms what we, which there was already some reporting to this effect, but it's always significant when the mainstream media catches on to things that we've been talking about for a while here. This was an in-depth report about the way that Israel killed, murdered aid seekers, and then would just bulldoze over their bodies and leave them in these mass, shallow, unmarked graves. So this was an important piece of reporting here from CNN. They used eyewitness testimony, they used on-the-ground video, and they used satellite imagery to see. And, I was talking earlier about the death toll. Like, these people who were murdered seeking aid and then had their bodies just left there and bulldozed over, they're not counted in the official death toll. Officially, they're still missing. Mm-hmm. And many of them, their families are still holding on to hope that they exist somewhere. Maybe they were detained by Israel. Maybe they're in some prison camp. Maybe they're in some other part of Gaza that we can't get to, and communications are very limited. Like, they're still holding on to hope. And the reality is, because of this indiscriminate killing, and this was all around, by the way, GHF sites, is where this mass slaughter was occurring by and large, and where CNN focused their investigation. But just the most grisly details imaginable here. And I also want to say some of the reporting comes directly from IDF soldiers who are turned whistleblowers and have been in contact with this Israeli nonprofit organization that serves as a sort of nexus for IDF soldiers who can come forward and, report on these war crimes that occurred. But they said, there was no process or procedure for dealing with the dead. We just bulldozed them over and left them there and kept going. So just so disgusting.
And there's still no real media in there, right?
That's right. Yeah,
so
that's right.
Remember that. And I've said that before. I go, when someday, eventually, I don't know, maybe a year, 2 years, somebody's actually going to go in there, like tens of thousands of people, and who even knows?
And then Hillary Clinton has the gall to say the problem is TikTok.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Okay. Let's get to CNN, shall we? Turning now to CNN, in genuinely what is one of the grimmest developments in news that I have ever seen, something literally the stuff of my nightmares. They have announced a partnership with Kalshi, a prediction market, much like Polymarket, where they will be officially collaborating together to promote Kalshi, betting odds, and others in CNN or incorporate it into their live coverage. Just to give you a taste of Kalshi, what is it? Here is their co-founder, Tariq Mansour, talking about his vision for the betting platform. Let's take a listen.
You've mentioned multiple times that you think prediction markets will be bigger than the stock market. What is it going to take to become $1 trillion asset class?
It's pretty much already like close to 100 billion a year asset class, right? Like, it's pretty easy to imagine a 10x from here. We haven't even started. It's been a year. I think a very large number of people care, much larger than traditional markets. And I think retail as a pie has just been growing in the US, and I think it's going to keep growing. It's growing in the stock market, but it's growing outside of the stock market. The long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion. And I think if you do build a general purpose exchange that can resolve differences of opinions on anything, like, the TAM is quite massive, quite a bit bigger than the current TAM of the stock market. I think putting aside sort of the retail trading and the institutional trading product, like, there's sort of this separate product, which is like, we are living in a world where, like, we have an abundance of information, but there's a lot of noise, and, like, we don't really understand what's real from what's not. And prediction markets are an antidote to that. They do a very, very good job at distilling information and surfacing truth to people. And you're seeing this sort of massive shift where, like, people are using them whenever they think about questions about the future, whenever they're debating about anything. And I think that trajectory is going to keep going. That's a new consumer habit that I don't think is going to be undone.
If you missed that in the middle of TAM, by the way, is total addressable market for those of you who don't speak bullshit. But Kalshi, if you missed this quote, the long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion. So that means anytime we disagree, anything may happen, that can turn into a commercially tradable asset that anybody across the world can just simply place minor bets on. Now, I could just never imagine a world where this might corrupt said news influence or influence outcomes or not highly regulated or, this idea where you want to turn literally everything from sports to entertainment to news to, he literally said everything. We're going to get to this later in 60 Minutes. You have amateur bettors out there trading on whether Taylor Swift is going to be pregnant in the year 2020. And he goes, oh, this bettor, he's like, oh, that would never happen. He's like, I've analyzed her character. That's sick, okay? It's sick that is even, I'm not talking about defending her integrity or whatever. It's like, people should not be betting on that, period, okay?
Well,
that is a total violation of the social contract.
We already know what this looks like because of sports.
Yes.
I mean, we know what it looks like. It has deeply compromised the integrity of sports. And not that sport has ever been perfect, blah, blah, blah. But now it's like, okay, who's on the take, right? Which, is it the referees? What players on the take? These individual one-off bets that you can, they're gonna make this many points or this many free throws or this many rebounds or whatever. Like, those are so easy to rig, which is why players increasingly are getting caught up in these scandals where, lo and behold, they are on the take, and it is corrupt. And so your whole sense of what is going on in the sport gets completely undermined, where no longer do you feel like, there's some cheating occasionally around the margin, but by and large, it's a contest of merit, and what I'm seeing is real. No, increasingly your sense is this is more like WWE. This is more like fake and rigged, and everybody's in on it, and if you're not in on it, you're a sucker. Or you have a situation, you can see this with news as well, you could see very easily how this would happen. You could bet on what color dildo is gonna get thrown at a WNBA game. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that someone could bet on it being a purple dildo.
And then throw it.
Lo and behold, show up at the game with the purple dildo and throw the freaking dildo. I mean, it's just so disgusting. And then broadening out here even further, I thought Arnaud, who's very thoughtful and insightful on these things, had a great post thinking about the bigger meta implications here. He says, I cannot think of a single way in which this makes society better. You're now going to have people financially, on top of emotionally, invested in their opinions, which can only create further polarization. Societies need consensus. Hard to see how you help achieve this when compromises become financial losses. So if I'm betting on my opinion, now not only am I emotionally I want to be right, but now I also have money riding on whether or not this is correct or not. You can see how this would spin out of control. He goes on to say, also, it literally disincentivizes truth-seeking. Markets work based on anticipating what others will believe, not on discovering what is actually true. It's the meme stock phenomenon. Those stocks don't rise because the company is valuable. They rise because enough people believe others will keep buying. You'll have the same thing with opinions. People are rewarded not for being correct, but for anticipating what others will believe and incentivized, literally financially incentivized, to manipulate narratives so that their bets pay off. Truth becomes not only irrelevant, but in many cases will be actively fought against because it becomes a direct financial threat.
Yes.
Like, if this is not the end stage of capitalism, I don't know what is. It is so incredibly dystopian. We have got to revolt against this complete financialization and the absolute takeover of every aspect of our lives by these bottom-feeding financial, gambling.
Yeah. These guys are billionaires, by the way.
It's disgusting. I know.
Just so you know, they're literally billionaires.
And not only do you have the first level of people placing bets, you also have an increasing ecosystem being funded of startups around this that will then take those bets and bundle them and package them as securities, and you can borrow against them. And the whole disgusting ecosystem of our casino capitalism that we have is also being built up to create these bets into separate markets that can be traded secondarily as well. Yeah. Just, putting this whole thing absolute predation on the people who are at the bottom and putting this throughout our entire economy at every level.
Yeah, let's put C2, or sorry, F2 up on the screen. This is about CNN and their data partnership. Basically what they're saying is they'll only use Kalshi data and they'll be the exclusive prediction data. And I have been thinking about this in the context of our own coverage because it's tough, right? It is newsworthy to cover the poly market odds on a race.
Yeah.
They had a decent track record in 2024. But to me, there is just something fundamentally different about either money exchanging hands, like in the way of a sponsorship, like with ESPN, right? When they had ESPN Bet. They actively were making money from sports betting and then covering sports. There has to be a literal firewall. Or here, in this case, they say that there's no money exchanging hands. I don't know. I find that hard to believe. But more importantly, it's like an actual endorsement. So you and I talking, it's just different to me. And maybe that's semantics, but like it is fundamentally different. Saying, look, we don't take money from these people. We don't want any money from these people. I think these are degenerate. They're bad, and I would ban them if they could. While they exist, I will talk about it. But that's not the same as a flat-out endorsement and saying that this is an official thing that will be incorporated. And again, the ability for manipulation and for insider trading and just like for the to show people how easily this can all happen. Can we put F6 on the screen? I checked. This is a real market, by the way. That happened yesterday. F6. What will Anderson Cooper say during his show? Anderson Cooper is a CNN host. So you have people who are live betting what the individual words that he might say. This was an $80,000 market with huge odds, 1%, right? I mean, the payout on that is massive. Well, if you're a producer at CNN, a low-level producer, there's probably, I don't know, how many would you say, 50 people who work on the Anderson Cooper show?
Something
roughly,
like that.
right? And you're a guy pulling in 33,000. He might be the sound guy. You might literally just be a contractor, but you happen to be in the editorial meeting. Just power it up. Hit something like this because you know it's coming, get a nice 66-to-1 payout. Is that technically fraud? I don't know. I mean, is there any governing authority over that? If you can do this all in...
the Trump administration certainly doesn't give a shit.
But not even that, Krystal. If this is all in crypto, then you don't even know,
Yeah,
right?
that's
But
right.
if this is not even in the US dollar market, then nobody knows anything. And look, does that really matter? Not really. But let's make that bigger. Pardon power. Let's say you're a lawyer and you happen to bet on a pardon market. I mean, think about it. Taylor Swift, people are gambling on whether she's going to get pregnant. Honestly, if I were her, if you're, what's the term, trying to conceive, I would bet it and then I would go do it. Just go. I mean, look, that's sick. It's crazy. And this is, I've been trying to warn about this with sports. Everybody says you're a prude. Sports betting been around forever, Saagar. No, prop bets like this have never been around. And actually, especially in a widespread market. Why? Do you know how many of my friends know the over-under on fucking A.J. Brown's number of yards in the next game? This is not a thing, all right? This never existed. And this is, that's like one minor one. Or, oh, the defense to score a touchdown. Now imagine that at every facet of our lives, what you and I are going to do our next monologue on, or the topic. And that's just you or me. CNN, Trump, the words out of his mouth, the Federal Reserve. They're doing already derivative contracts and futures contracts in cryptocurrencies, in various different ones. Who the next Pope is going to be. Who the next James Bond is going to be. I mean, same thing on the James Bond question. If you are a executive at, I forget the estate of who owns the James Bond, the Fleming, right? If you're a Fleming person and you have influence over what, you could easily be doing that. Is this technically corruption? Again, I mean, to what extent? But the point is not even about regulation. The point is this financialization, betting. We had long-standing taboos on this for a reason. We understood that betting and gambling is the most, literally one of the most degenerate and horrible activities that you can be into. It has one of the highest suicide rates of any addiction.
Very addictive.
And when it consumes people think I'm a prude. It's because I see the results. I mean, seriously. And this is why I'm not even saying it should be totally illegal. Regulate it to the casino. I really believe people should be required to go to a casino. When you see somebody with fucking emphysema, smoking cigarettes, sitting there, blowing their life savings away on a slot machine, you're gonna go, yo, this shit is evil. And you need to see that stuff, like for your own eyes. Behind a screen and all that, it doesn't seep into you. Like you need to see the type of people who you were around. And I've seen people break down and cry at casinos. Like cry, tears, slam, tape. You know how many people people commit suicides in Las Vegas? They literally cover them up. It's the reason why you should see that is because you need to understand the socialization of what it means for this shit to be legal. But whenever it's all behind a screen, you can be sitting there and just gamble your life savings away. And I've covered those stories. Remember my monologue about that guy? He literally never placed a bet in 2021, gambled away millions of dollars, gambled his children's christening funds. Like, it's sick. And of course, DraftKings allegedly violated their own internal policy. According to their lawsuit, they deny all wrongdoing. But this could happen at the highest level across all society. And that's why the CNN, for me, I mean, according to them, the most trusted name in news. No, ridiculous. But the point is like, this is a major fucking brand. And also, turning the news, I've watched this happen with sports, is so many people only pay for sports media now for gambling stuff. The reason that the Adam Schefters and all these other people have so many followers and they make so much money, especially now these days, is because they're the first to report injuries or insight. Well, what do you think is going to affect the Vegas odds? Right? If so-and-so's injured, that means the line can move. That's why these people all pay attention. Even NFL Sunday Ticket, like the ability to watch all the games. The only reason that people are paying so much, like their subscriptions have massively gone up. You know why? Because people are gambling on more games. They don't give a shit about the Los Angeles Rams or the Titans if they live in Philadelphia. They're betting. Like, that's what it's all about. So that's what the news would turn into. I mean, I guess maybe it'd be good for us, right? But I'm speaking purely out of societal interests, is that I don't want people to want to be more informed because they're gambling on everything. If anything, it'll distort all of the outcomes. So look, long-winded rant, but I mean, I've been trying to warn about this and I can see it coming from a mile away. It's getting so much worse. F5, please, just so we all know, is that the prediction markets, Fanatics, if you know what that is, Fanatics is the fan company. I think Tom Brady and all those people are involved with it, and Polymarket are set to go live early this week. This is F5, please. Are set to go live as early as this week, with FanDuel later in the month and DraftKings by January. Fanatics, FanDuel, and DraftKings are launching in states where they don't even offer mobile sportsbooks. So this is also, by the way, a de facto way to legalize sports betting in the entire nation. That's what this whole thing is about. Soon, look, it's all 50. Just so everybody understands, like when I rant and rave, the sports betting companies are now bigger than Hollywood. They make more money than the box office of the entire United States theater industry. That is how big an overnight thing happened. Nobody consented to it. The Ohio governor, Mike DeWine, very recently said that if he could go back, because he signed the bill legalizing sports betting, he said if I could go back, I would never do it. He's like, it was one of the biggest mistakes that I ever made. And look, I mean, we have the power if we want to, but how many people are we going to watch people's lives get destroyed in the interim? We're going to have millions of gambling addicts. In the next 5 years, millions and millions of people. You make this accessible to everybody, people are going to blow tons of money. And these people are all just going to get filthy rich. But the two people on that stage, they're already billionaires. Yeah. They're already touting the woman. They're like, she's the youngest self-made woman billionaire ever. More than, I'm like, oh, great. What a fucking accomplishment.
Way to go. Yeah.
Thank you for showing that women can also be, can also become very rich by exploiting degenerate impulses.
Yeah. No, it's overall, it's degrading to society. Yeah. It's wrong. Yeah. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's just wrong. It degrades society. It creates a level of artifice around absolutely everything. It creates increased polarization. It's disgusting. And the vast majority of people are going to lose. Like when you bet, you are much more likely to lose your money and end up much more in the hole. And guess what? That's more and more riches flowing to the top, flowing to those people that were there on that stage saying they want to financialize absolutely everything. Very disturbing, and I think it's disgusting CNN is doing this. I think people should revolt against it. Don't watch CNN. Let them know what you think.
I agree.
I mean, it's, there's the answer. Don't watch any product that's brought to you by these people or that, endorses any of these products.
I mean, it's going to be tough. I like Harry Enton. Right?
It's incredibly degrading. Yeah.
We use his clips.
Oh, we just covered Jeremy Diamond's report on the, the bulldozing of the corpse.
Right.
I
mean, I don't take it out on these guys personally. Like, I understand the utility of the data while it is legal, but that's kind of more of a meta point is when the executives themselves are like, hey, and they're, again, look at the sports. Sports is bigger. NFL, 57 million people watched the Chiefs-Cowboys game on Thanksgiving. It's the most watched regular season NFL game in history. I am absolutely convinced it's because of gambling. I'm telling you, 100%. If you go on TikTok and all these other places, all of the memes are about like trying to hold it together with my family while my Thanksgiving parlay falls apart. Like it's like part of the culture. At this point. This is all going to happen now with the news. I guarantee you, next election, the number of people who are going to be betting on the next election, it's going to be crazy. And Robinhood and all these other people, it's going to be fully normalized. And just think, there's going to, how many, if you thought voter fraud, if you're one of those election fraudsters from 2020, how many people are going to be trying to influence the events of the votes, especially when it comes down to the states?
Right.
Like in Pennsylvania, right? What would you do for millions of dollars? People will do a lot of shit. Look at the federal prison system. So think about it. If you're going to place a bet, I'm going to bet that J.D. Vance is going to lose Arizona. It's like, well, then what do you think people in Arizona?
Yeah, what are you willing to do to make that happen?
What are you willing to do? If you're let's say you are a low-level county secretary of state pulling 25 G's a year in Yuma, Arizona or someplace like that. You're not going to fudge things a little bit? Who wouldn't? So you could see exactly how this could, there's so much potential for fraud and whatever. I already know we are gonna find out the hardest way possible.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate.
It's like so many things in our, it's one thing when you have to go to the casino and there's like a physical action. Okay, yes, this is the thing we do. It's not exactly like it's sort of frowned upon in society, but it's there, and you can have access to it and you're an adult and okay, you got to go there and do the thing. And still it was bad for some number of people. But yes, it was sort of walled off. And now it's just shot throughout our entire lives. And I feel like that with technology too.
Of course.
Like it was one thing when you had the flip phone and, you could text on it and you could have it with you and coordinate. And that was great, right? And then it was kind of cool when you got your first smartphone. And now it's just like, it's just they've colonized our entire lives. They've colonized our entire brains. What was good in a small dose is now incredibly damaging and deleterious. So anyway, that's where we are.
That's where we live now.
Yep. We wanted to give some updates here, and probably we'll cover this more on the Friday show, but there are some developments with regard to these boat strikes and the illegality of them, and some breaking news. The Wall Street Journal with this scoop confirming what we already, of course, very strongly suspected. You remember that top admiral who resigned around the time that the boat strikes were starting. Well, it turns out that this was pretty directly related to him questioning the legality of the boat strikes overall. And I'm not just talking about the double tap. I'm talking about the overall program. So this says Hegseth asked top admiral to resign after months of discord. I think that's sort of soft pedaling, actually. The claims in the article, which seemed to indicate it was directly as a result of his questioning of the legality here. It says Hegseth's move, which has been previously reported, sheds new light on a brewing controversy over the legality of the military's campaign. Hegseth has dismissed a number of high-ranking military leaders since taking over the Pentagon. Having Halsey leave at this particular moment at the height of what the Pentagon considers to be the central action in our hemisphere is just shocking, says Todd Robinson, who served as Assistant Secretary for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs until January. They say, but according to two Pentagon officials, Hegseth asked Admiral Alvin Halsey to step down. A de facto ouster that was the culmination of months of discord began days after Trump's inauguration, intensified months later when Halsey had initial concerns about the legality of lethal strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean, according to former officials. So already not on Hegseth's good side, and then he questions the legality, and that's when he is asked to leave. So again, confirmation of what we all very much strongly suspected and consistent with other concerns from whistleblowers about this is just like claiming that we're at war with these drug boats and then that we can, randomly kill them and there's no war authorization from Congress. All of this is, it's brazenly illegal, and clearly there were concerns internally, and if you had those concerns, you were pushed out. Let me go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen, which is just a good article from the Washington Post about the way that they have changed their responses on all of this from the beginning. And they just go sort of blow by blow here of what this administration has said and when. So first, Trump says military literally shot down a boat from Venezuela. That was the initial reaction. Then Hegseth says that he watched it live, which would come to be very significant, about what he ordered and what he knew about it. A Pentagon spokesman, after the initial reporting from the Washington Post came out, saying that there was a double tap strike and that Hegseth had given the kill order. Pentagon spokesman said that, quote, this entire narrative is completely false, so seeming to indicate that even the details of it being a double tap strike was incorrect. Then Trump says Hegseth told him he did not give a spoken order. Then Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes, according to White House press secretary. So they're saying, first Trump is like, well, I don't think he gave the spoken order. Then they're saying, okay, well, he did, but he authorized Admiral Bradley then to conduct these lethal kinetic strikes. Then Hegseth says, I watched that first strike live, but he didn't stick around for the second strike. So clarification, I guess, on the original claim that he had watched the whole thing live. And then Trump says, I support the decision to knock out whoever is piloting those boats, which is different from his original reaction, which is that he did not like the idea that there was a second strike. So they've been kind of all over the place. And the overall thrust at this point is to claim, well, this was totally legal. And here's why. And their claim now is that, well, the two people who had survived, one of them was trying to call for help. We took that as them still being combatants. And that's why it was legal to do the second strike. But also, by the way, Hegseth had nothing to do with it, and it was all Admiral Bradley here. Let me put the next one up on the screen. This is some new details from the New York Times. This is effectively what I was just saying, like their U.S. military's boat strikes planning takes on new significance. They talk here about how in advance they had planned contingencies for if there were survivors, so trying to, make this seem like there was more sort of official decision-making as well. And then put G4 up on the screen. We've got more Republicans who are concerned and voicing dissent over what was done here and starting to assert some power. And Saagar, this reminds me, the sort of political reaction here reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with Elise Stefanik and how she's now decided to go aggressively after Mike Johnson. She's not going to go after Trump, but she wants to separate herself from the Republican Party overall. And so she's chosen as her target Mike Johnson. It seems to me like Pete Hegseth is filling that role for a number of Republicans as well. Their Admiral Bradley is here on the Hill today taking questions from Congress. They've launched investigations, bipartisan investigations in both the House and the Senate. You've had a number of members. Rand Paul has been very aggressive, talking about how basically they've been lying. And, he's been concerned from the beginning about the illegality here. And so his rhetoric has been pretty forceful, but others as well, not just Rand Paul, who is, more sort of principled on these things in general. So, I think Hegseth is genuinely in a bit of a. Emily thinks that they feel like they've sort of nailed it and they're good and they're in the clear. I don't know that I'm convinced about that because he is such an incompetent person to begin with and not really loved and has made all sorts of enemies in the time period that he's been there. It seems to me like he could be a convenient scapegoat for these people.
Oh, Hegseth? Yeah, I mean, I could see that. But the thing is that I was talking to you about this before the show. This whole thing drives me nuts. Well, trying to litigate the specifics of naval law about a second strike is the whole point is that this is fucking stupid. Striking drug boats while pardoning the Honduran president who was a narco trafficker. Also, remember Yon Grillo, who we've had on the show?
Yeah.
I mean, he made this great point. If you are a Chapito, the son, you just got a sweetheart deal because you kidnapped El Mayo and brought him to America. The Wall Street Journal just did this long story about all of these narco traffickers who were cutting deals with. I'm talking about real narco traffickers, not guys on some fucking boats.
Guys who are poor fishermen who's desperate. Yeah.
See, this is another thing that drives me crazy. Not just cocaine, fentanyl, like the Mexican drug cartels, who are 90% of the fentanyl that enter the United States are the people who put it in the cocaine and then bring it here to stretch their own profits. We're cutting deals with those guys, like very good deals. So what's the,
and those deals we did with Bukele so that we could, put random innocent Venezuelans in CCOT. we handed over some drug traffickers, gang leaders to him because he didn't want them testifying about whatever his deals that he had cut with them as well.
I'm not even against doing deals with, whatever, in order to, lock up more narco traffickers. I'm not even saying that. But I'm saying if you do that at the same time that you're saying that we need to kill these guys on boats who, again, allegedly have cocaine, not even fentanyl, almost certainly not fentanyl, because especially the ones in the Caribbean, not fentanyl. Sorry, I could say that. And if you believe that, release the evidence or prosecute them. I'd be happy to say I'm wrong. I'm talking about purely your own DEA report, which says no fentanyl. You guys said that, not me. Trump's own DEA, April 2025. I tweeted out the report. You can go read it. It's public if you want to. The point that remains around this whole thing is that Washington seems to be consumed with this whole second strike on the boat. And it's like, no, the strikes are dumb. Now, in a liberal internationalist framework, you can talk about international law and all that. As you guys know, not my thing. I'm just like, why are we even entertaining this? Like, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
They just can't. And by the way, America agrees with me. There was this theory that these would be massively popular. They're not. Trump is very underwater on the strikes. They're not buying this bullshit.
No, they're not.
And they shouldn't, because in your lifetime, have you ever heard about Venezuelan fentanyl before this whole? No, but everybody knows where the fentanyl comes from. Everyone. If you're striking Mexico, it actually could be a different story. But again, the geopolitical implications of that would be so insane, considering our trading relationship. This is an ideological war. Their pretext is just like WMD. It was never about WMD at the time. It was about regime change. This time, fentanyl is irrelevant. If it wasn't fentanyl, they would make up some other shit.
Yeah.
And it's even, oh my God, even with cocaine, it's like we're talking about 10% of the cocaine. So that's, instead of 90%, that's not the place that you would go if you really were concerned about doing something. So my only saving grace, most Americans think this is total bullshit.
Yeah.
But then in the conduct of the Pentagon, it is so disgraceful the way that Hegseth has, he threw this guy under the bus. I mean, I don't know. I feel for the admiral. Like, it's like, Hegseth gives him this order. The Southcom commander goes. He's a SEAL team guy. Long history of these counter-terror missions. I don't know how closely he looked at the legality and now all these guys, I mean, look, for this admiral, like, you need to lawyer up. You're already before Congress. Dude, I mean, when the Democrats win, you're going to be testifying at the very least in private in a classified setting. You could be testified publicly.
Oh, I don't even think it's going to have to be till the demo, because there's already a bipartisan investigation, both the House and the Senate. So I think it's coming before even Democrats take control of anything.
And then
like,
the drone operator, right? I mean, that guy's going to have to get a lawyer. Like, you're talking about the individual soldier service members. I think, Navy. So individual sailors who are all involved in this. It's like, what they're put in an impossible position.
Yeah.
Because Hegseth is telling them, you're gone if you're gone if you disobey orders. Literally fired the Southcom commander.
I mean, think of what this does within the military, where I think previously there had just been sort of an assumption like, oh, if I'm being asked to do something, it's been run through the proper channels, whatever. Yes. And now not only are you like, no, it's not, number one, they're inventing fake secret memos. They're firing or pushing out anybody who disagrees. And by the way, if there are questions about this and it becomes hot, they will happily throw your ass under the bus.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So you need to be thinking about anytime you get an order now, you better be consulting a lawyer, talking to one of these outside organizations and thinking hard about what is this going to mean for me and what kind of jeopardy this puts me in for the future. That is a very different mentality, than is typical in these situations. And to your point about how just preposterously, insultingly stupid all of this is. Take a listen to Kristi Noem talking about how Trump is saving millions of lives with these boat strikes. This is G5.
You've saved hundreds of millions of lives with the cocaine you've blown up in the Caribbean.
I'm sorry, hundreds of millions of lives. Can you tell me again what the population of America is?
330 million.
He's saved literally all, we would all be dead of fentanyl overdose if it wasn't for these boats. I mean, it's so stupid. It's so embarrassing. Pam Bondi has said similar things previously. Trump says similar things all the time. Do you know what the impact on drug trafficking will be of these boat strikes? Zero. It will be literally zero. Everyone knows this. Some of these people, one of the people they murdered, by the way, their family is like, he was literally just an innocent fisherman and is now like going to court over this. So yes, on every level, it's disgusting, it's immoral, it's murder, it's wrong, it's outrageous, and it accomplishes literally nothing other than helping Marco Rubio in his like undying quest to, to overturn.
To fulfill his father's dream?
Fulfill his dreams,
Yeah,
yes.
no, his father's dream was to free Cuba. They think it's like domino theory. These people are fucking crazy. Like, he writes about it in his own book. I'm not making this up. He literally wrote it in his book that was one of his father's wishes, okay? You can go read it for yourself if you want to. Look, I'll tell you, I said this on Twitter. I was like, look, I can forgive people who fell for not forgive. I can understand people who fell for WMD in the wake of 9/11. It was scary, mainstream media, but man,
we had just been attacked. It was more, I didn't fall for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more understandable,
I can understand, not forgive. I can understand how a lot of people fell for that. But Venezuelan fentanyl, you're an idiot. You're an imbecile, and it makes me question like faith in democracy at all, if that's going to be a real thing. So we'll see. I hope the people are at least paying attention and are listening. And actually, my greatest hope would be an ignition of a real anti-war movement that used to exist in the Iraq days. Because what the blob has long found out is that as long as not that many Americans die, most people will just tolerate stuff. Yeah. But I do think Israel actually ignited a big anti-war sentiment in a lot of people, even though we weren't the ones directly involved. We were funding it. But if we start to, some sort of Libya-type campaign, again, yes, even if hundreds of Americans don't die, and it's only special operators and only special operators in CIA and only Air Force drones and all that, it's like the point should be we should not be involved on this under false pretenses. It's ridiculous. It's counter to our own interests. So I do hope that it becomes, I don't know, I hope it ignites some sort of public consciousness.
Yeah.
Because that's something that we really lost from the 2000s. The anti-war right was a real thing. The American conservative, the Pat Buchanan, writing and railing against the Iraq war. The anti-war left was huge. It was a potent force, and it really died sometime around 2016, which is really, it's tragic. And Trump obviously hijacked it for his own purposes and betrayed it simultaneously. Mm-hmm. So I do want it to come back. I really do.
Last thing I want to give, Glenn Greenwald made a good point here that I think is worth reading out as our last item here. He says, there's been valid attention paid to how many Americans indoctrinated from birth to love Israel want the U.S. to serve Israel. There are also people from Latin America or its immigrant communities who want the U.S. military used to change that region's governments that they dislike. I grew up in South Florida. Many Cubans did not learn English despite being given U.S. citizenship because they believed it was the U.S. government's duty to remove Castro, then Chavez, so they could go back. Both Rubio and Congresswoman Salazar, whose comments we played here before, come from that milieu. And I think that is an important thing to keep in mind, is that these people who have very powerful government positions, Marco Rubio is one of the most powerful actors in our government right now, deeply ideological and committed to this ideological goal that has nothing to do with benefiting America overall. And so there is a commonality between the, how perplexed we all are and disgusted with the commitment to Israel over and above, what's good for the world, certainly not what's good for Palestinians, let alone what's good for America, and the ideological direction and content of the boat bombings and the potential regime change in Venezuela.
It's not a bad point, actually.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate it. Friday show tomorrow. We'll see you all then.